Hey everybody, welcome to the Red Zone. Michael Johnson here with you. Today we're going to be talking about media rights, TV rights, and conference realignment. They all kind of go together. We're going to talk about the Big Ten and how they've managed to kind of screw up their media deal. And we're going to talk about something Joel Klatt talked about on his podcast with conference realignment and how the changing TV landscape is affecting college football. But before we do that, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed. Like the video, always leave a comment, and hit that notification bell, and you'll know every time we upload a new video. We're heading into the new season, so you don't want to miss any of our content. Okay, so let's talk about the Big Ten first of all. You know, it wasn't too long ago, Kevin Warren, the former commissioner of the Big Ten, negotiated a media rights deal worth $7 billion with Fox and NBC. And it turns out that contract wasn't complete. You have probably heard about some of this or read about some of it. Essentially, Warren had promised the 2026 Big Ten Championship game to NBC, and he didn't really have the authority to do so. It actually belongs to Fox. So as a result, the Big Ten is going to have to pay Fox back $40 million for giving away that Big Ten Championship game. In addition to that, the Fox and the Big Ten weren't able to really come to a reasonable solution to the lost games because of the COVID year when, with that issue, when the Big Ten started late. As a result of that, the Big Ten has to pay back $25 million to Fox for that. So do the math, $65 million they have to pay back. And then, you know, there's also going to be the issue of these primetime games being played on NBC. So part of this deal is on Saturday nights, you're going to see a primetime Big Ten game on NBC. And that sounds all great and all, except that, you know, Fox has first pick. And so, you know, NBC has released their lineup of games for primetime for this year. But notably to this is that there's been a big pushback from schools like Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State about playing some of these games at night in November. Because historically with the previous contracts, the schools had the option of playing at night, but they weren't forced to do so. One notable is the Ohio State-Michigan game. That game has never been played at night. It's either been historically a noon kickoff, but occasionally you'll get a 3:30 kickoff, and that happened in 2006 when 1 versus 2. The game did end under the lights, and after Ohio State's win that night, you know, the city of Columbus had to deal with I guess you could call it riots, but kids pulling couches in the street and burning them, flipping cars. And so it was a mess. I remember that night. I remember when it happened. There was law enforcement from all over Ohio called into Columbus to help out, cops on horseback. And it was a mess. It really was. And so I think playing that game in primetime in Columbus is a bad idea. And I know there's big pushback right now. So the new commissioner, Petiti, is having to negotiate and go through all that stuff. And so also, I'm going to put up right here, take a look at NBC's primetime schedule. So you start off with East Carolina at Michigan on September 2nd. That's at noon. And then you have West Virginia, Penn State at 7:30. That's going to be a really good game. Next week at noon, you have Delaware at Penn State. And then you have Charlotte at Maryland in primetime. Now, that's not really a game you would consider a primetime game. And so part of this is, with the scheduling, is that with Fox getting the first pick, NBC's not always going to have a great game on primetime, which is unfortunate. So the NBC primetime game on Saturday night is going to feel a lot like Thursday night football in the NFL. It's usually a bunch of, you know, they're not great matchups. Some of them can be boring. And so that you're seeing that with NBC. You know, you would think NBC would want to have first pick, would be able to get first pick because it's a primetime game, but that is not the case here. Going on to the schedule. Washington at Michigan, that should be pretty good. Syracuse at Purdue, that's an okay game. Ohio State at Notre Dame will be a huge game September 23rd. And then you have USC at Notre Dame October 14th. And then the ones in November, Michigan State at Ohio State. We don't know if that's going to happen. It's part of the schedule. But like I said, these teams are pushing back. And that may get renegotiated. And these big-time teams probably won't be playing that primetime schedule. So I would think you might see some changes to this schedule going forward. Last game, November 24th, Penn State at Michigan, another game that I know would be great for NBC. I don't know if that game will get played in prime time. Time will tell. You know, part of the reason the Big Ten has never forced their teams to play primetime games in November is because of injuries. They call it a tolerance rule or whatever. and you're dealing with injuries at the end of the year. The problem with playing a primetime game is you sit around all day long waiting for that game. And I get it. High school kids do it and everything, but it's just the fact that athletic directors and coaches are pushing back pretty hard against this is remains to be seen how that plays out. So, new media deal takes effect this year. So all the details not worked out, and we'll have to see how that plays out. Some of these games in here could be pretty good. Obviously, getting a Penn State at Michigan on a Saturday night, that is the one thing that I've really missed when Fox got the Big Ten was that, their big game is big noon kickoff. And I don't like the best game of the day being played at noon. I mean, I get why Fox did it. Everybody else, ABC, they were all having primetime games. And this is a way to combat that and offer a great game early. Because historically, you get, okay games at noon. And then they get better in the afternoon. And you get your best game in primetime. And if you're going up against two other networks, CBS and ABC, who both have a great primetime game, CBS with SEC, ABC with a Big 12 or a Pac 12 or sometimes a Big 10. That's competition. So you put your best game at noon, you get all the eyeballs on it, and you kill in the ratings. And that's what Fox has done. And, it's great for them. It really is. But it's not so great for us fans. So I don't like it. I don't think a lot of other people like it. So, but we'll see what happens with that. And then moving on, the biggest topic I want to talk about is conference realignment. So I'll put a link in the description because I don't want to, I'm not trying to steal his content, but Joel Klatt on his show on College Football and Fox YouTube channel he talked really about the idea of conference realignment. And I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to mention some of the same things he did. And then I'll, like I said, put the links so you can listen to the whole thing. But he talked about how, in TV, it's always been a linear TV landscape. So you had cable TV, satellite. It was subscription-based. It was all about subscribers because a network like ESPN, they get essentially what's called retransmission fees. So cable companies pay ESPN so much per subscriber, and ESPN takes a lot of that money, and that's how they put their shows on. That's how they have a college football contract, things like that. And so a lot of people, the general thinking is that it's advertising that pays for all this. It doesn't. Advertising is actually not the big pot of money. It's these retransmission fees. And I think ESPN gets something like $3 or $4 per subscriber. So think about it. If you get $4 per subscriber and you have a cable system that's got 3 million subscribers, it's 12 million bucks, so that's a good chunk of change. And you multiply that by all the different cable companies. In this country, you have 200 million people that watch TV, maybe more than that. So do the math. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. And that's why on cable systems, you'll often see, we all have these great channels we like to watch. So you have the Fox Sports and the ESPN, you have ABC, NBC, TNT, USA, TBS, the main channels. But then you get 150 or so of these just trash channels that have nothing on them, that are completely boring, that nobody watches. And why are they on the cable system? Because the more channels that get added, the more we as consumers have to pay. Well, the reason is because like Warner Brothers Discovery, they have a Discovery Channel, okay? People love the Discovery Channel, and they have the Warner channels. Paramount had Comedy Central. A lot of people love Comedy Central. But what they do is what Warner Discovery will do and what Paramount and NBC Universal and all them will do is they will tell the cable companies, if you want Comedy Central, you got to carry these other 8 networks that nobody's watching. And that's just kind of, and ESPN has done. If you want ESPN, you got to carry all of our ESPN channels. If you want NBC, you got to carry, all of our the Golf Channel and all that kind of stuff that, some people watch, but it's not hugely popular. So, and those retransmission fees are how these channels that nobody watches can afford content and can put stuff out there, put shows on the air basically, because production of TV shows is not cheap at all. So that's kind of how the system works. It's even for your local TV stations. It's the same deal. Your local stations, even though they're free on an antenna, cable companies have to pay them per subscriber. And so that, every time you'll see an ad come up for your local station. Your Fox station at midnight tonight will not be on DirecTV. Call and complain now, and they'll give you a number and all that stuff. Well, even though that channel's free on the air, it's not free to the cable company. And the more these companies and media companies demand higher rates, more money for retransmission fees, which they're demanding because advertising dollars is shrinking. So they're trying to make up the difference. But the more the cable companies have to pay, the higher our cable fees go. And so we kind of hit a tipping point finally where people have started cutting the cord. So they're getting rid of cable. You're getting rid of satellite. And so as an example, I eventually got rid of Cox Cable. I still have Cox Internet, but I got rid of Cox Cable. And at the time, I signed up for YouTube TV. When I first signed up for YouTube TV, it was $39 a month. So I paid $89 a month for really good internet. I paid $39 a month for YouTube TV. I'm paying $120 or so for what was costing me $220 for cable, the cable bundle. So I'm saving $100. Well, fast forward now, and that's like 2015, 2016. Fast forward to 2023, and YouTube TV just upped their fee. I was paying $74.99. I finally dropped YouTube TV, but I was paying $74.99 plus the $89 for internet. All of a sudden, streaming has become almost as expensive as regular cable. And YouTube TV now has a whole bunch of trash channels that I don't want to watch. When YouTube TV started, it was a lot of just the primary channels that people wanted to watch. And now it's just gotten like cable and the prices have gone out of control. And to me, it's not worth it. It's not. So I dropped it. So you have cord cutters who are done with that basic cable model. That's the linear model. Okay. So what is it getting replaced with? Well, ESPN just announced that they are going to offer ESPN as a standalone streaming service. They already have ESPN Plus. Now they're going to offer ESPN. What I anticipate them doing is they're going to charge a ridiculous amount. They're going to charge something like $39 a month to get all the ESPN channels, and then there'll be another tier, add a little bit more. I'd say $29 a month. Add another more for $39, and you'll add ESPN Plus and maybe ESPN News. And then if you pay $49 a month, you probably get all of that plus ACC Network, Longhorn Network, Pac-12 Network, or Pac-12 I think is Fox, but you'll get ACC, SEC Network, and so on. College football fans will pay it. They will pay it. And so Fox Sports may end up doing the same thing. Not sure. But they can't give away the content for free. They just can't do it. So they've got to charge for this. And so with ESPN saying, finally getting on board and saying, we're going to offer our service just standalone, and we're going to, instead of get $4 per subscriber from cable, we're going to get $29 per subscriber, maybe half the number of people subscribing, but we're going to make out with more money in the long run. And so that is what's coming. Well, streaming is a lot different than linear cable. Linear cable for these media companies like ESPN and Fox and all them is about subscribers. Streaming is about views. It's about eyeballs. It's about how many people are actually watching. And so what Joel Klatt said, and I 100% agree with, is that going forward, these media rights deals, the dynamic of them is going to change. The previous TV deals have all been about how many subscribers and how many markets are you in and how many, this and that. And that's not going to be the case because the networks and the streaming services want viewers. And so what he mentioned was last year in 2022, the most watched college football game of all games played last year was Ohio State versus Michigan. Like 17 million people watching. That's a lot of people watching. It really is. In this day and age, that's a lot of viewers. The next biggest game was the best SEC game. And we're talking about conference games, not like non-conference. And the best conference SEC game got about 11.5 million viewers, and that was Georgia and Tennessee. So 11.5 million. That is a 6 million viewer difference between Ohio State, Michigan, and Georgia, Tennessee. And then you drop down, like the Big 12's best game was TCU and Texas at like 5 million. And so it just drops and drops and drops. So in the era of viewers, where we want as many viewers as possible, there's going to be an emphasis not on markets, but on views. And so it doesn't matter if you're in Atlanta or Chicago or New York or LA, the biggest markets. If people aren't watching you, you bring no value to the table. So what he thinks is going to happen, and I think is actually going to happen, is that this expansion of conferences to become super conferences is going to stop because future TV deals are going to be predicated on views. And so what are you going to want? You want the top teams who can bring in the biggest viewers. I mean, that's what this is all about. It's about views. And so you have the teams that draw the most views: Ohio State, Michigan, surprisingly Michigan State, Alabama, Auburn, Oregon's number 10, Oklahoma's in there. There's a few in there, and I'll put a list in the description because I have the list. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but those are the teams that bring in the most viewers. So those are the teams that the media companies want to show. What does that mean? It means teams that don't draw an audience are going to get dropped from conferences. We are not going to get super conferences for much longer. You're going to get smaller conferences because the schools that draw the most are not going to want to evenly share the money with the schools that don't draw any views. And so take the Big Ten, for example. My guess, and I haven't researched this, my guess is a team like Indiana, maybe Purdue. You have other places, even Minnesota. They don't draw the viewers. They don't draw the viewers of an Ohio State, a Penn State, a Michigan, the Michigan State. They just don't. And so even Maryland, Maryland doesn't really draw the views. So I think conference realignment will continue, but it will continue in a different way. If you could imagine a 12-team conference with the top 12 viewed teams on average year to year. I mean, that's a super conference, but that is what these media companies are going to want to pay for in the future. They're not going to want to pay for some of these other games. And it's also going to change the dynamic of non-conference scheduling. Because look at that NBC Primetime, the East Carolina, Maryland. Who's going to watch that? Who's going to watch it? Ratings are going to be very low. They're going to get like a 1.2 rating for that game. It's going to be very low for a primetime game. And which streaming company really wants that game? I mean, you can't really charge much in advertising if you don't have viewers. So it's a loss. That game is a loss for the network. And so and Maryland fans may hate hearing that, but it's the truth. So I think it's the next TV deals that happen are going to be a lot different than what we're seeing now. The days of conferences getting mega deals like $7 billion, this will be the last time you hear about that. It's not going to happen going forward. The only way the Big Ten gets that kind of a deal going forward is if they blow up the conference, get rid of the dead weight, and bring in some big name teams like Clemson, bring in an Oklahoma, something like that. That's how you're going to keep the viewers, and that's really what's going to matter. Joel Klatt has a lot more information about this. Link in the description because I think you should go watch his video. It really is a great video. Really, it's 20 minutes long, I think, but definitely worth listening to. And so that's really the only thing I had to talk about. Some NFL news, what I read, and I don't know if this is true or not. At this point, a reporter says it's true, whatever, is that prior to Russell Wilson going to Denver, there's reports that, Philadelphia wanted him. He didn't want to go to Philadelphia, and he didn't want to go to Washington. And so he ends up in Denver. Honestly, I think Philadelphia fans are pretty mad that he wouldn't want to come there. But I think Philadelphia won out in the end. They got the better quarterback. They got the better team. Denver's a cellar dweller right now. I don't see them being any better this year. They won 5 games last year. Might be what they win this year. They might win 6. But they're not a very good football team. And Russell Wilson might have been a product of the system in Seattle and not necessarily a product of his talent. So we'll see how that plays out. Other NFL news, I don't keep up with the NFL a whole lot. And other sports news, you have the Oakland A's, who draw 0 crowd. They have a rendering for a new stadium in Vegas. Listen, I don't know why you would want to go to Vegas to watch a baseball game. That doesn't sound entertaining at all, and especially the A's. And then it was the Portland Pickles, which is a minor league team. They put up a nice social media post that talked about how they've already outdrawn the Oakland A's in attendance this year. Yeah, that's pretty funny. But baseball as a whole, man, there's some problems with baseball. I mean, you've got umps out of control. Man, these guys are like, they're like Kim Jong-un dictator type running baseball. I mean, these guys think that they are just the be-all, end-all and can do anything they want. And I think, personally, between the pitch clock and some of the other changes in the rules, I don't even go to baseball games anymore, and I really don't watch it anymore. And this is part of the reason. And honestly, with the electronic systems that we have in place today, balls and strikes should be electronic. I mean, you put a box, and if the ball went in it, it's a strike, and if it didn't, it's a ball. And I don't think, having catchers snap their glove back to try to fake it, that does away with all that. And the pitch clock, I mean, it's just, I saw a guy get called for a pitch clock violation in a highlight video, and everybody's all mad about it. And it's like the pitcher's standing there waiting. Well, the batter is out of the box, and the batter doesn't step in the box until there's like 2 seconds to go. And all of a sudden, the ump calls a balk or pitch clock violation. The guy gets on base. I'm like, what is going on here? I mean, come on. I mean, I don't know. I think after the ball gets thrown back to the pitcher, that batter should have 5 seconds to get back in the box and be ready to go. And so that should have been on the hitter, not on the pitcher. But baseball's gotten way ridiculous, out of control, and just the rules are stupid. The whole game's become stupid, and it's nothing like it used to be. That's my rant about baseball. I really don't have much else to talk about right now. Just wanted to get on here and give you my opinion on some of the things going on. College football, of course, is our mainstay here, and we're looking forward to it. Spring practices and games are over, so we'll get into the meat of it. Starting around July, we'll start doing some conference previews, some team previews. Clearly can't do 131 team previews, but we'll do some of the main teams, what to expect from there, and hope you guys can stick around for that content. Again, if you like the channel, please subscribe, like the video, leave a comment, and then hit that notification bell so you can know every time we upload a new video. We'll get at least one a week from here to the end of the season, so sometimes there'll be more. Guys, thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Take care, and God bless.